Boom. Zoom recording started. Perfect. Let's get started. My guy Lance, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your story and everything you got on. I really do appreciate it, especially since you've had success at every level that you've competed at. And so I've definitely looked up to you ever since you were the volunteer assistant at Tech. And so it's been nice following you, and I'm happy to sit down and speak with you, even though it's over Zoom.
It's all good, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is our second attempt. The first one I was driving down the freeway, so this is probably a little easier and safer. But yeah, I'm excited. It's always cool to be able to share stories with people and kind of give people a different perspective on things that they can't really see from the outside sometimes.
Yeah, I love it. So for all the people who don't know kind of who you are, give us a brief little background on who you are, things you've accomplished, things like that.
My name is Lance Palmer. Currently, I'm a professional fighter, and I come from a wrestling background, and I wrestled since I was 9 years old. And basically, wrestling is what got me into fighting in the first place. Just having that background of wrestling all the way through college and kind of trying to find another outlet besides freestyle wrestling or just chasing the Olympic dream. It was more for me about starting a career, an athletic career outside of wrestling. And that was kind of how I got into fighting and partially what got me to where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I love it. I remember back in the day when I was wrestling was seeing the Palmer family name everywhere, because I knew whenever we were driving into Ohio territory, we basically knew we were getting our butts kicked. And so going to Tournament of Champions and seeing like the 8-time champs, things like that from I think your brother was one that like might have like really ran off with all the tournament
Dude,
champions.
Colin had so many. There was times I think I won 6 Tournament of Champions titles, but Colin won at least 9. I think 8 or 9. It's like
Yeah.
it was crazy. He was Colin was so talented at such a young age. Like when I started wrestling, I was 9 years old, and when he started, he was 5. So he was already wrestling for
Wow.
almost 2 years before I started. And just watching him be able to compete at such a high level at that young of an age was crazy. Like I remember when he was like 8 and under at Tulsa Nationals, and he was just smoking everybody, and everybody's like, oh yeah, it's like he's really good, but once he gets older and once kids get tougher, it's like then he was 12 and under and he was still winning national titles and beating everybody. And like it was almost like certain times I was literally just like, man, he's probably going to be bored because nobody can really beat him.
Yeah.
Like he was that good at such a young age. And me starting at 9 years old, the kids that were 9 that had already been wrestling since they were 5, they were really good. So it was kind of like a big game of catch up, like trying to chase the kids that were already wrestling. And at that time, for me, it was a challenge because I was like, okay, well, I need to catch up to where these guys are because they've already been wrestling. And I was just playing baseball and soccer and doing karate and like just doing my thing. And I wasn't really, I guess I really didn't think about wrestling until I tried it. It wasn't really anything I thought of. I was just like, oh, my brother does wrestling and I do karate. Like he actually did karate with me, and then he kicked his teacher in the shins. And so that was like kindergarten. And then my dad pulled my dad pulled him out of karate and put him in wrestling instead because he thought it would like, I don't know what he thought it would do, but he thought it would like get him more tired or something. I don't know.
Combat sport to the other.
Exactly. Like knowing wrestling is probably worse than karate because you just throw people on their head. So I don't know.
Less structured too. I know at that young age.
Oh yeah.
Like, whoo,
Yeah. And that was probably the thing is like with karate, it's like my brother didn't really have like that great a focus at that young of an age. You're 5 years old.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really like, I was super focused in karate and I was working towards my black belt and stuff like that. So I was really focused and I was already like halfway through the belt ranking system at 9 years old.
Damn.
But he basically got to the point where he was like, this isn't for me. Like he wanted to do something like, because when you're that young and you do karate, you're not really sparring. Like you're
No.
doing like, you're like, I had like these little, I might still have them somewhere, but you have like these little, like, they're not styrofoam. They're almost like mat, like Resolite mat material. And they're like this thick and they go over your whole arm. And like, you just wore that and you just like touch spar here and there. But I vaguely remember doing that more than a couple times before I quit karate. And that's when I got to the point too where I was like, I want to compete against somebody. Like I don't want to go to, I think we would go to this big convention center in Akron for our belt testing, and like you do your kata, which is a routine, but it's
Mhm.
not against anybody. It's just like the judges watch you and make sure your form is good and correct, and that's it. And then
Yeah.
you get your stripe or your new belt or whatever. And it's like at that point I was already competing in baseball, and I was actually better in baseball than wrestling. So I was like, I knew what competition was at that point. And I really just was like, man, this isn't like, I kind of followed Colin's footsteps of like, okay, well, what's the point of this? Like, I get that it was like karate is, it's a martial art, so the discipline and teaching like control and using your weapons wisely and like just all the, you know, all the cliche combat stuff for
Mhm.
martial arts, which it did help with, and it was good, and it helped with discipline and control and all that good stuff. But I got to the point where I was like, I really just want to compete against somebody else if I'm going to do like a combat sport. There's like no combat involved. So
Yeah.
it was like my 9th birthday. I went to, it was Mid Park High School, and there was a practice that my brother he was going to practice, and I wanted to go. My dad had bought me a pair of wrestling shoes for my birthday, and I was like, all right, I'll go try it. Like he was just, I guess he was probably just like, I think he wants to wrestle. So he just got me shoes.
Yeah.
And then I jumped in and I was like, I didn't know anything about wrestling. So it was kind of cool because I was like, man, these guys are beating me. Like it was my very first practice. I was getting taken down, probably put on my back. I really don't know. But I do remember that I was at Mid Park High School, and it was like that. I had like a mental change that day, and I was just like, I think I only continued karate for a few more months after that. And I told my sensei, because my dad was really big. He still is really big on like, if you don't want to do something, or if you have something, like you got to tell that person.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna go a different direction, you got to tell them. Don't just do it and not tell them you're gonna do it. Especially like a coach or somebody like that. You got to
Mhm.
be straightforward. So I went up to him and I was like, I said something like, "Yeah, Sensei Ellis, you know, I like karate, but I like wrestling better, so I'm gonna quit karate." And he actually like he tried to convince me. He tried to convince me pretty hard to stay because I was at purple belt at the time, and I was like,
Ooh, purple. You're almost there.
yeah, and brown and then black. So I was really close. But for me, it wasn't about the ranking. It was about like testing myself. And I like even at that age, I knew that I wasn't really competing or getting that competitiveness just by doing karate. And I know there's like competition karate, but that's after you're a black belt, and it seems so far away when you're 9 years old. So I lasted
Yeah.
a couple
Wow.
months. Yeah, I lasted a couple months in that before I told him that I was done. And
And
you
then
know,
was it all wrestling after that?
then it was all wrestling. But even when I first started, like I was I was all in, and I knew like this was my sport, even though I wasn't great at it. Like I really wasn't that good at wrestling. I would just try to push harder than everybody else because I felt like it was one, I had a late start and I didn't have the natural ability to wrestle like Colin did. And like watching him wrestle, he would just flow. And he was like
Mhm.
6 years old, and you're like, Jesus, how is this kid that good? And he's that young. And I was like, I'm never going to be that good, like naturally. So I have to figure out another way to get to that level. And it was by just working harder than everybody. And so I would have to just see how hard everyone else worked and try and work harder, try to be stronger, try to be in better shape. Like basically, since like the limit of my natural ability was I knew what it was. So I had to just like compensate elsewhere. And I think that's what kind of like poked the monster a little bit and like started that whole thing to where I'm at now, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really sounds like uh, the level of like, once you figured out that competition really pushed you, it was like, that's
Mhm.
kind of what made you continue was that, like, I mean, you switched sports to continue to compete. You
Yeah,
knew other people were competing. You were like, I want to get a bite of that competition in.
it really was. It was more like, and this is what's kind of crazy too, is like at that age, like 9 and 10 years old, I was on a hot stove baseball team, which was like that was I think 8 was like the last 8 might have started fast pitch. I can't remember, but 9 I knew we were already in fast pitch baseball, and I was really good at baseball, and I was really good at stealing bases. I was really good at getting on base. I was good at hitting. Um, I was really small, but I was super fast. So like I was good at stealing bases, good at making. I was just like good overall at baseball, and I was
Mhm.
like, man, it was super fun. And the team that we had, we were on like we were all together in the same like we were in the same grade all the way up through 8th grade.
Yep, it's all ping, 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 ping.
Yeah, but it got to a point where, and I was better at baseball than wrestling, and like when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, I wanted to go to Arizona State for baseball because they were really good at baseball at that time. Like I had a whole plan at that age. Like I'm playing baseball in college. Like I want to be a
Wow.
baseball player. I didn't like wrestling was fun and it got like the energy out of me, but like baseball was my thing. I was way better at baseball. I was like the only left-handed pitcher in our whole region. Like it was one of those things where like if I really would have pushed in baseball and it didn't get too political, I probably could have done something with it. And it was 8th grade. It was in the summer. I was already kind of fed up with the coaches because all 5 coaches were my teammates' parents.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like it turned into a political thing of like little Johnny's going to play first base because I'm the coach. Like, and then little Billy's going to play shortstop, and he's going to pitch and he's going to catch. And it just turned into it like I didn't really want to play center field, and they would only pitch me when they wanted to pitch me. Um, and I kind of turned into a little dickhead a little bit at that point, and I was just like, well, if you guys aren't going to play me where I'm good, like he kept trying to tell me that a left-handed first baseman didn't exist when like your right hand is your catching hand and your left foot goes on the base. Like it doesn't get any better than that for a left-hander. And he just didn't put me there because his son played first base,
Mhm.
and it was just like, and then I was too short to play first base because I couldn't reach if they didn't throw the ball to me. I'm just like, this guy's full of shit. Like I was in
Yeah.
7th grade at this point, going into 8th, and I already knew these people were full of shit, just making excuses. And I actually this one kid, I still kind of talk to him here and there over social media. His name's Trevor Brooks. His real dad was one of our coaches for a long time, and he was actually like he was awesome with me. He was actually really cool. He helped me a lot with baseball, and I respected him a lot. Um, but Trevor Brooks' dad, he was like one of the reasons I stuck around for that long, because there were some other parents they were cool people, but when it came to baseball, they were just like so biased towards their kid when their kid really wasn't great, but they were just a coach and they'd been our coach for so long that they just put people where they wanted.
Mhm.
And it turned into a thing that I really just didn't enjoy anymore. And it kind of sucked because that was my favorite sport. And I've seen people get driven away in other sports that are really good at it, but they don't get a fair shake because the other person's dad, like he's in that position too, or he's playing offense, and they, you know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
the politics in youth sports is what ruins it for a lot of kids, especially people who have drive. Like there's no question that I have drive and I could have been good at it, and I was already good at baseball, and I think I was a threat to a lot of people on the team. And I think it came down to like they were making excuses that I would go to wrestling practice twice a week instead of baseball. And I was like, yeah, because you fuckheads don't let me come in here and play the position I'm good at. And I just
Yeah,
like, I turned into like, I was like the person who was like, I don't know what you call it when you kind of, you veer off the path of the
you're just
rest of the
a
team.
little rebel.
Yeah, I was just kind of being a rebel, and it was literally the middle of a game, and they pulled me out. They pulled me out from pitcher, and they were going to sit me for like an inning or two while somebody else went in. And I looked at my dad, and I was just like, I was already pissed, and I was getting ready to go to. It was summer of 8th grade. I don't remember what I was wrestling, what I was going to wrestle in anyway, but I was going to wrestle somewhere, and I was like, fuck it, I don't want to be here anymore. I was like, it's not fun for me. I was more frustrated and like stressed out about it, like in 8th grade. And like, this isn't something that you should remember 20 years later down the road,
Yeah.
you know? Like, this is something that pissed me off because I was really good at baseball. And I was like, you know what? Fuck these guys. I was like, Dad, I'm done. I want to leave. And he's never like if you're going to start a season of something, you finish it. And
Yep.
he's never, but he knew that it bothered me that much. And he was like, all right, let's go. And then I actually wrestled that entire summer. And that was like the turning point. I mean, I was already doing well in wrestling at that point, but that was the turning point where I was like, I want to be a 4-time state champ. I want to focus purely on wrestling. And that was kind of where, that's where everything turned just to wrestling. I didn't do any other sports after that point.
Yeah, it's like being a coach now is kind of crazy, like seeing like the impact that parents can have and how their kids play the sport and think about the
Mm.
sport, things like that. And so it's like even like building a culture around wrestling. Like up north, we know that like the culture's tough up there. It's like
Yeah.
you're gonna be getting after it. And so down here, it's like North Carolina, it's not really that culture down here for wrestling, and so we're trying to breed that.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
it's
like,
hard to do that without pushing kids away because wrestling's a hard sport, even if you're good at it.
yeah,
So if you're trying to build kids, you're really not trying to build them uh, technically, you're trying to build them mentally. Because once they can handle the mentality of wrestling, then you can build the technique and be like, okay, this is what we need to do more of, or this is how we get better. But it's like, how can you make it fun, but still make that person grow mentally at such a young age? Because it's a fine line.
it
Like
is.
it's like, I saw kids drop like flies from like 12 years old all the way up through high school, even in college. Like they get to college and it's just a rage fest because they've been like sheltered their entire life up to that point, only wrestling, only this, like, and
Yep.
then they get to college and they're like, I don't really want to do this anymore. Like the only reason I did it is because this person made me do it, or like this person pushed me and I didn't want them to feel bad if I quit. Like I feel like that's what a lot of people think because it's really hard. It's hard to teach, and you can't teach the mentality that much. You can only try and bring it out of kids at a young age or at any age, really. But it's more of a confidence thing. Like you have to believe. Like I had doubts like all the time, even when I was ranked #1 in the country my senior year of college. Like you always have the demons in your head, like telling you that you can't do it, and it's more of a switch that you have to flip yourself. Anybody else can tell you like, man, you're one of the best 145 pounders in the country or in the world. Like you could be top 5 in the UFC, you could be this, but until you do it, you're like, yeah, I mean, it sounds cool and I believe in myself, but you don't really believe until you do it. And
Hmm.
that's why, like, once I beat Metcalf senior year at Big Tens, like, that's when I was like, I always had belief in myself, but you have to do something to really believe. And that was what I had to do to believe. And then, I mean, that it's just little things like that,
Yeah,
like from a young age, like little wins here and there, even if it's at small tournaments. I feel
yep.
like a little kid could really boost their confidence, even if it's just like even at practice, you get to take down a kid you never took down before, and you're like, oh dang, I can do that. Like obviously that kid's going to be ticked off because he never got
Yeah.
taken down by you before, but now you're in a position where like okay, like now I have to step my level up a little bit to the point of like I need to at least get one takedown in practice against this kid now because I've done it. Like I know I can do it.
Yeah.
So it's tough though. Like
Hmm.
people always talk about my dad like being too hard on us in like the way he went about coaching and teaching, and like he didn't know everything about wrestling. He just took us to the best people he could,
Yeah.
like Jeff Jordan,
Yep.
Eric Burnett. I mean Jeff Leonard, Mitch Clark. Like we went to so many different people to learn from, and he knew that's what we had to do to get better. And he put a lot of things that he did was just like asking other parents or asking older parents, like Dustin and CP Schlater's dad. Like he picked his brain all the time because they were already good when we were young.
Hmm.
Like Dustin was a year ahead of me, and he was the younger one out of the two. And so we would always see them winning these big tournaments as a kid, and my dad always picked his brain. And it's just like, what can you take from other people that works for their kids? Some of it may not work for your own kids because your kid has a different mentality.
Yep.
Like things aren't going to work, or they'll have a different style of whatever the sport is, or it's it's a fine line trying to like you can't really breed a kid into being an athlete unless they have the mentality that they want to do it.
Yeah. I've seen that. It's like there's the fine line is almost like because you're gonna have to break the kid.
Oh
The
yeah,
kid's gonna have to get broken, but then he's gonna have to want to come back after being broken.
yeah,
He has to come back and want to work harder, so he pushes that broken wall farther, and then
exactly.
just becomes a tougher individual like all around. And so, what what were some kind of ways that you handled like the doubts, the adversity, things like that, kind of just growing? And this can be either like through high school, like through college, like that breaking point you said with Metcalf, or even in your professional fighting career? Like,
Yeah.
what are some ways that you kind of handle the doubts and the adversities?
Honestly, it's pretty simple for me. It comes down to like you have doubts, like you train super hard, you put in all the work you can, you stay after practice. Like even in high school, it was always like there were kids that would stay after practice, and we would go over some things with the coaches and like what happened in the live goes that I could have done a little better, like especially my freshman and sophomore year. Because at St. Ed's, it was always like there was always another level that you could get to. I mean, I think all 4 years I was there, we were number 2 in the country behind Blair. So it was like we're always trying to get to that peak.
Hmm.
And the biggest thing for me with the doubts was just knowing that I put enough work in, because anytime you doubt yourself and you're like, I didn't really put in all the work I could have, then yeah, there's a reason to doubt yourself.
Yep.
But when you go back to that, you're like, I literally did everything I could. I did everything I was asked of in practice. I did all the extra that I like that's smart to do. Like obviously there's overtraining and there's other things that aren't smart, but like I did everything I could from a training aspect outside of the room and inside the room. Um, there's really no reason for me to be unsatisfied with the outcome. Like I put everything I can into this. Whatever happens is going to happen. Like you can
Hmm.
try and perform your best. You may not have a good day. You may not feel great on your competition day. Um, but can I go out there and say that I put all the work in and did everything from like an eating standpoint? Like obviously you have days where you feel like crap in the room because you didn't eat right, or you just you're bringing your weight down during the week for practices, and you're just at that point, like the breaking point mentally of like I just want to go eat everything, and I just want to like I don't like the high school wrestling time of like you're at the lunchroom during lunch and you're eating your lunch that you made at home, and these kids are eating pizza and cookies and like drinking
Yep.
pop and shit like that, and you're just like why am I doing
Yep.
this?
I'm gonna have my tilapia and brown rice.
Yeah, it was like my dad used to make us sandwiches or make us salads, and like we would eat like a good amount of food. It wasn't like we were starving, but we
Yeah.
weren't eating what other kids our age were eating. So
Yeah.
you're just like, dude, fuck this. I don't want to do this. But then you
Oh,
look down the road, you're like now looking back, I'm like, yeah, everything that we did was the right way, and it was worth it. And it's not always going to turn out that way. Like, luck, we put ourselves in a position where we were able to win 4 state titles and put ourselves in a college scholarship, and all the things worked that way. And that's all you can ask for as a parent, I guess, is like to do all the right things for your kid. But those are the things that I always think about now, is like back when, like, I always go back to the high school days of like, man, there was times where I really didn't want to get on the Airdyne bike after practice, but Coach Leonard made me get up there and made me do that little, 10 minutes extra of
yeah.
bike sprints. And it's just like that little bit extra could have been the difference. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
what if you didn't do it and then you do lose? Like, that'll weigh heavy on you for
Oh,
sure. And then there's nobody that you could blame but yourself.
there's
So, like, when I think about doubts, I just go back to, did I do everything I could? Like, did I put myself in the best position to win? Then if you don't win, you have no regret. Like, I
wow.
don't regret losing in the national finals. I wish the match would have played out differently, but it didn't go my way, and that's how it goes. I mean, it actually lit a fire for me to start fighting. So if I would have won, maybe I wouldn't even be in this position. Who knows?
Yeah.
So life works in weird ways, but the one thing I can honestly say is that I have zero regrets of the training that I've put in, and I've never gone into a competition saying like, "Well, I didn't really train, but let's see how this goes." Like, I've never, I don't remember one single time where I've ever done that and just said like, "Oh, let's wing it." Like, even when
Yeah.
I got my first opportunity in World Series of Fighting in, like, I think it was 2013 or 2014, for a title fight on like 3.5 weeks notice, I was still training. I just wasn't like in fight camp or like cutting weight or anything, but it wasn't like I wasn't in shape and I wasn't doing the right things. It was just I fought a more skilled guy that night, and I put myself in bad position and got caught in a choke. But I don't regret taking that fight because it put me in a position to even get to here.
Mhm.
So it's like, when you really, and if I would have doubted myself, I wouldn't have taken the fight. So
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of the doubting, like, you're always going to have little doubts here and there, like getting in
That
your own
little.
head.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's always in your own head too.
it is. It's nobody else. Like, nobody else is saying like, dude, you're not ready. You shouldn't take this. It's
Yeah.
like it's most people are like in your corner. They're like false. Actually, the only person ever says anything like that they're nervous that I'm not ready is my dad, out of all people. I came
Really.
home this is actually a good example. I came home last year because I own a landscape business, and we
Mhm.
do like tree removal, patios, you name it. We pretty much do everything outdoor. So I was literally like 3 weeks out from a fight or 2 weeks out from a fight. I flew home to cut some trees down for my wife's coworker who we had done an estimate for, and it was scheduled to be done. And like, my business partner at that time just dropped the ball, and I was like, screw it, I'll pay for a flight home, I'll come home and do it myself. Like, I wasn't going to not really lose the job, because for me it wasn't about the money, it was more about just doing the right thing for a customer.
Yeah.
And so my dad was all pissed off. He's like telling everybody else but me, but obviously it gets back to me. He's
Yeah.
like, he's fighting in 2 weeks and he's out cutting down trees and coming home from camp. I'm like, one, I did it on the weekend, so I'm not training on the weekend anyway. It's usually my day off. And two, I wanted to come home, see my wife, hang out at home, see the dogs. Like, I just made a trip out of it to come home. But like, little things like that, like, my dad's the most honest person out of anybody in my life. He'll tell me, like, not that it's right, but that's how he feels. Like, he's the
Mhm.
one that's the most honest about everything, and it's like, whether you like to hear it or not, he's gonna tell you. So like, that was the only time I've ever heard him say like that I'm not gonna be ready for something. and I ended up getting my first TKO finish in my career, so it ended up working out.
Wow. That's wild. But you definitely touched on some great points there with like just basically doing all the little things right. And that when you trust the process and have confidence, and like you almost gain confidence the more hard work you put in, the more
100%. That's
conscious
all it
work you
comes
put
down
in.
to. It
Yeah.
really is.
Sammy Henson really lit that up in me my senior year because he was just like, he was like the better or the more confident you are, the harder you work in here, the like you're not going to be afraid of getting tired out there. You're not going to be
Exactly.
afraid of what the other guy is going to do. You're just it's all kind of that internal battle and just
Hmm.
making sure that like you said, whatever the result is, I put in the work. Because
Yeah.
I've actually been in times where it's like I lost, and then I look back and I'm like, I didn't cut weight right. I didn't work that hard this week. I didn't do the right things. I didn't watch video on this guy, whatever it is. And then it's like, and then that's when it's like it's on myself. It's like, that's when you got
Yeah.
to kind of tighten up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, that's all it comes down to, because you can lose a match by making a mistake in the match, or like just not being the better guy that day, or, you know, something that you're like, okay, like I can own that. But when it comes down to like my sophomore year of college, I didn't really stay the course through the entire season. I was like, luckily I did enough to be an All-American, but it was probably like my worst year competing.
Mhm.
And I was, going out, I was partying. It actually wasn't really going out that much. It was just, I lived with like four other guys, and that we were all starters on the team. And it was just like after every home duel, we would just play beer pong or like party, like just like stupid shit that you don't really know if it'll affect you or not. But like when you look back mentally and you're just like, I probably shouldn't have done that. Or
Mhm.
like maybe that's the reason why I lost a couple matches or whatever. Even if that's not the case, it's better to not have that like burden on you, because that's the only year I really could say in college where I really screwed around. I mean, my freshman year, you're just like too stupid to know anything. So
Yeah.
you're just like, I'm gonna go out and wrestle. Like I don't even know who these people are. Like I don't know any of the names or anything. I'm just gonna go out and wrestle and try and win. Like your freshman year is pretty much like, even though it's your hardest year competition wise, it's your easiest year mentally because you don't even think about it. You're just like, shit, like I didn't even redshirt. I was like new to college, new to collegiate wrestling. I'm just like, I'm just fucking around in the dorms all the time, like hanging out with people, meeting new friends. Like I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You're 19, 18, 19 years old, and you're just like, that's probably the easiest year of your entire life, to be honest. Like the
When you
easiest
really think
year
about it.
as an adult on your own, that's got to
Yeah.
be it. Because
Freshman year of college.
exactly, because from then on, it gets harder and harder because you put more pressure on yourself to either succeed or to be successful in school or whatever else you're doing. And then, like, I'm 33 now, and it's definitely not any easier. Like, I'm in
Yeah.
a better place financially. That's about the only
Uh,
difference. I still push myself every day.
Yeah. The only year that's easier is your red shirt freshman year.
That's what I was gonna say. If I would have redshirted, that probably would have been an easier year. But then
Yeah.
I may not have made it to the actual freshman year, so I don't know.
Oh, hey, that's the story of my life. That's why I ended up at West Virginia. After that first year at Tech, I was like, I got to get out of here.
After I actually wrestled my first year and I ended up doing well. I placed fourth at NCAAs, but it wasn't really like, I didn't really expect much out of myself, to be honest, because I just kind of got thrown in there.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a plan of like, I'm for sure going to redshirt or I'm for sure going to wrestle. I just wrestled off and won. And we kind of worked the lineup out where Jaggers went 41, Johnstone went 57. Um, and we just were like trying to build the program back up at that time. And I was like, man, like looking back on it, I probably should have wrestled anyway if I would have thought, like if I was thinking about redshirting, just to keep my focus. Because
Yeah.
like being on a college campus, like just like that young and just being able to like, because I knew most of the guys redshirted. So I knew what everybody else was doing. And I was like, I'm traveling to matches and like trying to get schoolwork done on the road, and these dudes are just out raging all weekend. And I'm just like, yeah, that would have been sick. That would have been a good time. So that's why I think my sophomore year I tried to make up for it a little bit. And then I like pulled in the reins my junior and senior year, and like I still like to party, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I learned how to control it like preseason and postseason and stuff like that. I just kind of I knew when I had to like put the gas pedal down and just get after it.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome. Yeah, I had a hard time laying off the gas pedal on the party side, but
Well, dude, that's how I got the nickname the party anyways. And now I'm like, I don't like I still like to have fun. Like when I do have fun, like I like to party, but it's just when that became my nickname, I was just like, I don't know if I want that to be my fight nickname, because I'm not really like a party animal. Like I'm not out all the time. It's just like when I do party or do like go, I like to have fun. I like to go 100%.
yeah. Hey, that's that I like the nickname. I mean, even when like even before the party was the party, it was like I remember just seeing you in the tech room and you rip off your shirt and you got your nipple pierced and I'm like, who is this guy?
See, exactly though. Like you met me during that time when I was still actually the party, like because that was like still college era, and that was. I mean, I know why I got the nickname the party, but like when you think about it, you're like, you know what? It sticks with me because it was a part of like, it is a part of who I am. Like that person had to get me to where I'm at now, so you have to own it and like it. So I'm cool with it now, but at first I was like, man, like thinking of like, I don't know why I thought this, but when I first started fighting, I was like, man, if my nickname's the party, nobody's gonna want to sign me. And I was just like now it doesn't really make sense because there's some dumbass nicknames anyway. So like
Yeah,
everybody has like a different nickname and a different reason for the nickname. So and you can't give yourself your own nickname. Like that's
yeah,
not the way it goes. So when Faber decided on the party, I was like, all right, I guess I'll do it. I don't really have a choice. Like I'm not gonna give my own nickname, you know.
yeah,
So, but
yeah.
yeah.
That's pretty cool that Faber picked that one out for you.
Oh yeah.
And so tell me about the transition from wrestling to MMA and kind of what that looked like and how it kind of came about.
So it actually kind of started to sprout like my sophomore year of college. I'd already been watching like UFC fights and stuff like that though way before. Like I went on a senior trip after high school with a bunch of my high school buddies. We went to Ocean City, Maryland.
Nice.
And like that Saturday, we spent like a whole week there. We rented this place and like we literally just drank. It was just like a bunch of dudes just wrestling each other and drinking all week. It was hilarious. I don't even remember going to the beach once, honestly. Like the very first day we got there, I had a bottle of Three Olives grape. I drank the whole thing, and then I was in the bed and in the shower for like 6 to 8 hours after, like being hungover. Probably had alcohol poisoning. Who knows? But it was like I was like, I'm not even old enough to drink, and I'm just raging at this
Yeah.
like beach house. And so like during back then, even starting then, like that was 2006. Uh, I was already watching fights. Like that was back when the WEC was big,
Hmm.
the UFC was big, and I was interested in it, but I never saw myself as like getting into fighting. I wasn't a person who got in fist fights all the time at school or like went out at parties. So I didn't like, I thought that's what you had to do to be a fighter, is just like go out there and just want to fight people all the time.
Yeah.
So I was just like, yeah, fighting, it seems cool. Like it looks like it'd be fun, but I'm not somebody who just like somebody looks at me wrong, like, what the fuck are you looking at? Like I could care less what people say to me, like unless they really get under my skin. So I didn't really realize it as a sport. I just thought it was fighting. Like I just thought it was a fight. I didn't think of it as a sport like how it is nowadays.
Yeah.
So my sophomore year of college, I was in the room wrestling, and Mark Coleman came in because he was talking to the
Mm.
group after practice, and he just like during practice, he's standing there with another guy named Mike DeSabato, and they're both like talking about me, and I can kind of hear on the side, like when I'm wrestling, they were saying something, and then Coleman pulled me aside, and he's like, he has like this, like if you ever meet Mark Coleman, you'll just know like he's like this like deep voice, and he's like talking at you like he's gonna fight you. Like he's super nice guy, but like he'll talk at you and like tell you what you're gonna hear. You're not gonna listen. He's gonna tell you. So you're like,
Nice.
so he's like, Palmer, you need to fucking fight after you're done wrestling. Like you got perfect intensity. Like you got the perfect style to be a fighter. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I was like, this guy's fucking nuts. Like I knew, like he was the former UFC
He
champ.
was nuts, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He's
like
a hell of a fighter.
Yeah, like you get,
Big,
like when somebody like that tells you you're going to fight, I was like, oh shit. Like I didn't know if he was going to try and fight me or what. Like this was still like, I was still young. I didn't really know what to do. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, it was nice to meet you. Like you're a legend at Ohio State. You're a legend in fighting. Like, he's like, nah, fuck that. He's like, you need to really get into this shit after college is over. I was like, all right, dude, whatever. And I kind of laughed it off, but I was like, I mean, the guy was really good at fighting at that, like for that era. Like maybe he sees something in me that I didn't see in myself for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, me and Mark Coleman talk all the time. He's awesome. Like I still to this day, I tell him he's the reason why I wanted to start fighting eventually. So it's
That's
like,
wild.
yeah, it's crazy how somebody like that can affect you on like in a conversation where you're like, I'm focused on trying to win a national title, and he sees me as a fighter, like just by watching me wrestle. So it was like, it's pretty cool that it happened that way. But
Planted the seed.
it did, it really did, and I didn't really think twice about it at the time. But when you kind of time everything out in the way that it worked out, and at that time, Mike DeSabato comes into play because he was sponsoring Uriah Faber, and Uriah was, it was called Cage Fighter at the time, and he was sponsoring him. So Mark Coleman was just like talking to Mike DeSabato and telling him like, man, you got to get this kid. Cause he was like, Uriah was already recruiting at that time. Like after Jaggers beat Mendez in the finals that year, it was, he brought Chad on as a teammate at Alpha Male, and then he brought Dillashaw. And at the time, I think actually Dillashaw came up with Mark Munoz to train with Faber, and then they kind of like, you know, hey, you should stay up here. We got a bunch of little guys to train with. And so like he was kind of building this stable. Like Benavidez came out there. Like Benavidez had a friend in Sacramento, and he just drove out in his station wagon from New Mexico and ended up staying. He went to watch a UFC fight there in Sacramento, and then ended up staying with his buddy from New Mexico. And they like, Joe just met Faber and started training. And and like, yeah, Joe's story is freaking crazy. But like Benavidez is one of my best friends. Like his story is so inspiring too. Just like how he just basically like rewrote his whole life. It's impressive. But like, so as Alpha Male kind of keeps building, that's kind of where Coleman tried to bring me into it in 2010 after I graduated from OSU. I went out and trained with those guys for like a month. And then it was kind of weird. I got a phone call from Kevin Dresser, and he was like, hey, I wanted to see if if you're interested in coaching, and I wanted to see if you want to come down to Virginia Tech and check it out, meet with the other coaches and see, if you think it'd be a cool fit for you. If not, that's fine. But I was like, yeah, definitely. Like I literally had just gotten home from Sacramento, and my girlfriend at the time, I was like, I'm going to go down to Virginia Tech and see. I think I drove her car down there because my truck was so bad on gas. I was like, hey, can I, you think I can borrow? Yeah, can I borrow your little Civic? They had like a 2-door Civic, and that thing, I was just ripping through the hills in West Virginia to get down there. And because I drove from Columbus to there, and I met with him and Roby and Yetzer, and I was like, man, these guys are cool. Like, I feel like I'll get along with them. And I already knew Jesse Dong, and I trained him when he was in high school and I was in college up here. So it kind of just like, I kind of put fighting on hold for that time period. And then as the season went on, I was like, damn, I could always coach. Like Uriah kind of put it in my head too. He's like, dude, you could coach when you're 70 years old. Look at Jay Robinson. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so after that season, that's kind of when I told Dresser, I was like, man, I love coaching. I like being here, but I still want to compete. Like, I'm going to go pursue this career. And if it doesn't work out, I'll let you know or whatever. But then I moved out to Sacramento. Literally like April 1st of 2011 was when I packed up the storage unit in Christiansburg and drove to Cleveland actually, to drop off some of my stuff at my parents' house to leave there. And then I just had my clothes and trash bags in the bed of my truck and drove with my brother all the way to Sacramento from Cleveland. And I was like, from that day on, it was pretty much like that was the start of my fighting career.
Man, that's a hell of a story.
It's so weird because it's all over the place. like I really didn't know what I wanted to do after college because I have a degree in communications. I didn't really my honest thing was that I wanted to coach at Ohio State. Like if I was going to coach, I was like, man, I want to be a coach at Ohio State. And like still to this day, like living in Columbus, being Ohio State alumni, going into the Hall of Fame this September, like I would still love to be a coach at Ohio State. So it was like, that was kind of all I thought about was coaching. And I didn't really get, and me and Tom Ryan have talked about this. Like, I felt like I never really got the nod to be a coach or anything, but at that time I wasn't really coach material, to be honest. Like he knew of me as a good athlete, but I was still partying, and like that's not really what he wanted the young kids to like look up to. Like I was never a host for any recruits or anything like that. I was like, that wasn't me, dude. I wasn't the guy for that shit.
They gave you the recruits. I got every recruit in.
Yeah, I was the guy that was like, I was the guy that was showing the real shit that went down on campus, not like, hey, we're going to go out to dinner, then we're going to the football game tomorrow. We're going to go to bed early. Fuck no. We're going out to party. Then we're barely getting any sleep. Then we're going to practice at 6 a.m. And then he's going to try and tire us out so we don't drink for the game. So we're just going to be extra dehydrated when we start drinking for the game. Like, there was no fucking way you're stopping me, Tom. And he knew that. So it was like, I got it. Like, I got it at that time. But like me and Tom have a great relationship now. Like we talk a good amount and go back and forth about different things just during the season, like when they have matches. And I go to a lot of the matches and when they're home, when I'm in town, and it's but yeah, like that's pretty much the main reason why I started fighting, because I really didn't want to compete in wrestling anymore. I didn't really have a love for freestyle, to be honest. And I thought I could have been okay at it. I mean, I went to Fargo twice without even training and took second. I took third and second, and I was just like, it wasn't really – the rules changed every single year. Yeah. And so that was one of the reasons I was like, dude, this is stupid. Like, they just make up rules as they go.
It's funny thinking back that we had a blood rag that we would show the ref every time.
Yeah. It's like you shove your blood rag in your underwear and then you wipe your face with it in between. You're like, what is going on here?
Just in case you start bleeding. It's like, we don't have halftime. We don't have anything, but we got a blood rag. That was always like so funny thinking about now.
And now you go in between periods and get wiped down by your coaches. Like, what? It's complete opposite of what it used to be like. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was basically it. I just didn't really want to compete past college wrestling in wrestling, but I wanted to use it for something else, whether it would be coaching or competing in. And I mean, I was like, okay, I'll give fighting a try. But at first I really had no expectation because I had zero background in anything else. I took one boxing class.
Except karate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that was it. Like, I honestly, like, I stopped karate so young, I don't remember any of the technique.
Yeah.
So it was like going into it, I was like, I really don't know anything but wrestling. So this is like learning a whole new world. And that's kind of what drew me into it.
Yeah. What was like one of the like did you think like I got the wrestling down, let's just focus on our feet, let's just focus on the stuff I don't know, like the submissions, things like that? Or how did you go about uh training for fighting after wrestling?
Honestly, I was drawn to jujitsu more than boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai because it was a flow just like wrestling.
Mhm.
You have like you could flow with somebody and you can not do any submissions for the entire time that you roll and just kind of like show positions and show chokes and submissions and keep rolling. And it's kind of just like wrestling. Like if you flow roll in wrestling, like to cut weight with plastics on or sweats or whatever, like you could just roll forever for an hour straight. And I
And
feel like,
drenched.
yeah, exactly. Like you can just go and like there's no harm, no foul. Like you can learn, you can get better, you can put yourself in scenarios.
Yep.
So I was drawn to jujitsu way before that. And Dustin Akbari was actually my first jujitsu coach at Team Alpha Male, and I mean, he's given me every belt all the way up to my brown belt, and I'm just like, I think if it wasn't for him, like teaching me he has a unique style of jujitsu because he's more of an ankle lock guy, but
Mm.
he's super athletic and he loves wrestling. Like I've taught him a lot of wrestling moves and just like simple things to up his game, and like we have like a really good respect for each other's styles, like my style of wrestling and his style of jujitsu. So we meshed really well together from the beginning. And he taught me a lot about jujitsu, and I feel that I taught him a good amount about wrestling, just like little things to help him. But yeah, I think jujitsu was definitely what I took to. I love boxing, and once I
Mhm.
started getting better at it and started doing better at it, it was something that I really enjoyed. But uh, the jujitsu part of it was probably just like coming from a wrestling background, you're already used to the grappling aspect. So
Yeah.
adding submissions to it and learning how to stay out of them and then learning how to get other people in them. It's like, it's more of a chess match, I feel like. So that was, I think that was the best thing that I learned at first.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think of like I mean I've only taken a couple jujitsu classes, but I feel like it's more like you said like that flow. But I feel like wrestling is such like a brutal like I'm gonna beat you up and then I'm gonna break you, stuff your head down in the mat, and then I'm gonna score points. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
and that's like the mentality that you train with. Whereas jujitsu, it's more of like it's just I feel like more calm. Like you're not really trying to stuff someone's head in the mat or like hold them down. It's more of just like you said that chess match of navigating situations and I mean and wrestling off your back too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's like the one thing that I'm getting better at now is learning how to play guard, which is being off your back. And it's like I've always been able to get up off my back. Like when we train for fights, we don't train to lay on our back anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
when we roll, we always like switch positions just so you can learn to be on bottom, learn to, get back to your guard, learn how to defend from bottom. And just because it's different, like what if you get dropped in a fight with a punch and then you're on your back anyway? Like you have to learn to fight from there to be able to at least get back to your feet or be comfortable there. So I've never been uncomfortable on my back, even from the beginning of learning. I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm so dominant on top. Why would I want to go down? You know what I mean? Like that's what I would always say. I'd be like, well, I could train on bottom, but if they can't keep me on bottom, then why would I stay there? And then I just got to the point mentally where I'm like, okay, I know I can get up whenever I want or reverse whenever I want. Let's try to like learn a little bit here instead of just like, trying to manhandle people with wrestling. And that's when
Yeah.
I really started to evolve with my jujitsu.
Yeah, because I've watched some of your fights and it's um I mean, it's almost like you know you're not going to get taken down almost, because it's
Yeah.
like, because I even like I was watching the uh Momedov fight. And he got in deep a couple times, and he tried to take you down. And then last second, I see those hips come out, and then you're in a front headlock, and
Yeah.
and just like seeing that, and like knowing that like it's gonna be hard to take me down. I'm gonna hit you with some strikes too, and then when it comes time, I'm gonna take you down. You know,
Exactly.
is that kind of like the mentality that you bring, or like how you the kind of what you picture your fight going like?
You know what's weird is I've had all different types of fights where like you're fighting a guy who his only game plan is to not get taken down and try and land more punches than you. And then I fought guys who like tried to take me down because they think like it's going to throw me off guard. Like I haven't been like people haven't tried to take me down since I was 9 years old. So it's
Yeah.
like I've had both. Like it's not going to throw me off guard to get shot on at all. Or like if somebody did take me down, I'd be like, okay, now we're in my world because I
Mm,
can get the reversal, I can get on top, and I can out wrestle somebody. So I never really feel like I'm in a bad position because if somebody
yeah.
shoots on me, I'm like, okay, well, let's wrestle. Like this is
Hmm.
what you wanted, right? So I don't know. I feel like I've had a couple people try and shoot on me like they were going to take me down. And then I think once they feel like wrestlers' hips, they're just like, why did I do that? And they'll like fall to their back like they're pulling guard. Like, just kidding. I was really gonna try. You know, it's really yeah, it's really weird. I think it all sounds good during a fight camp of like, man, you should just shoot on him because he's not gonna expect somebody to shoot on him. And you're like, okay, well, it's like if you take me down, I know I'm a better wrestler than you, so I could get to where I need to be. And I think it's just having the confidence of like knowing that you can out wrestle anybody, even though it's a fight. Like, you know,
Yeah.
once their arms are around your legs, that's where they're at. They have to wrestle you. So
Yeah.
I feel like I've never really been I don't think I've ever been uncomfortable in a fight where I've been on the bottom or on my back. Cause I've been on my back a couple of times. Like I'll defend a choke and go to my back and then they're on top, but then I escape or get a reversal. So I think that all comes with comfort of doing it in practice or like
Yeah.
being in practice or like having people take you down against the fence and then work your way up and like doing all those drills. Same with wrestling, just like creating that comfort zone of like, put me in the worst position in practice so I could be there. So I know if it happens in a fight that I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing that like wrestlers I feel like have, that is like they can kind of control where they want to be. I
Hmm.
mean, they can take you down. If you take them down, they can get up if they want to. They can stay down there
Exactly.
if they want to. If they don't want to get taken down, you kind of have the deck in your hands
Yeah.
as a wrestler um, in fighting. And then I like that professional fighters league is actually like tournament style too. That's one of like
Yeah.
the interesting things that like most other organizations don't do. And so how has that kind of impacted how you train for fights and things like that, knowing that you could, I mean, because you've even fought guys 2-3 times in a couple tournaments, and it's just like seeing a guy in Big Tens and in the NCAA's.
It really is.
It's like you were
So
meant for that.
yeah, it really like, and they don't want you to call it a tournament structure, which is weird because that's what it is. They just like they section it to like regular season, then playoff, then championship, which
Mm,
I get, but it's all the same. Like it's
yeah,
still a tournament structure. You're still like you have to win your way through the bracket to get there. So I honestly, it's one of those things that I thought from the beginning was perfect for a wrestler. Like
mm,
if you're smart enough about the system, and the first season, 2018, was more of a like we didn't know how this was going to go. Like this is crazy. You got to fight. Like I was barely having 2 fights a year, and then I went to having 5 fights within 7 months, and you're just like, dude, I don't know how to I don't know the break. Like I don't know how to take a break in between that short of a period, or like how long of a break I should rest before I start training for the next fight. Because like the first season was, I fought in June, and the next fight was like 6 weeks after that, and I went home for like 3 weeks or 2 weeks, 2.5, and then 2 weeks, and then I had 3 weeks of fight camp and then fight week. So I was like, damn, I don't really know. That was one of those times too where you're like, I don't know if I know I trained hard enough for the last fight, but did that little 2 week break kind of like mess up my groove going into this short 3 week camp?
Mm-hmm.
But I had a great fight then, and then I had a longer break. It was like a 4 week break before I did an 8 week camp for the playoff, which is 2 fights in one night if you win.
Oof.
So you fight the quarterfinals, then you have a little break, then you fight the semifinals. So that experience was wild because I've never fought twice in one night. Like I've wrestled 8 times in one day. After you lose in the consolation, like you lose your like second match and you have to wrestle all the way back. But
yeah,
it's different when you're fighting. Like in wrestling, there's not really a threat of like getting hurt. You know what I mean? Like you go into a match and you're like, you never think you're going to get hurt. You're just like, oh, it's just wrestling. Like if I tweak something, yeah, that's the way it goes. But when you're going to fight 2 people or potentially fight 2 people in one night, and they're both trying to hurt you, like the first guy, like hopefully this first guy doesn't hurt me to the point where I win the fight and can't continue on.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I won my first fight in the first season of the playoff, I had like maybe like 2 hours before the second fight. And so I got to watch that guy fight right after me, and then kind of like game plan. Cause I had actually, the guy I fought in the semis, I had lost to like a year and a half before that. I broke my hand in the first round and lost a 5-round decision. So I was like, I know I can beat this guy. The one thing I didn't have in that fight with one hand was being able to take him down. So that's going to change. That's going to make the difference of this fight. So in the semifinals, the first round was close. I think they gave him the first round on the cards. Then the second round, I moved. I set up my shot. I take him down, ground and pound, control the whole round. Third round, take him down again. I have his back forever. I'm like, he's standing up and I'm on his back and I'm trying to get this choke and I just couldn't get the finish. He defended the whole time and I knew he was exhausted. And I think I got another takedown because I think they stood it back up or like took us off the fence. And I got the takedown and put him on his back and landed a bunch of ground and pound. And I ended up beating him in that fight. And I was like, after fighting twice in one night, I was like, this is crazy. Like to fight twice in one night, I don't care if it's only 5 rounds total, like fighting 2 different people and having like one person fresh and then one person after you've already fought. Like that was my only fear is like, I'm in good shape, but I've never had to fight twice in the same night. Like I've done plenty of rounds. Like I did the exact amount of rounds that would be those 2 fights, but I never actually like fought 2 separate people in a competition. So I was like, this is going to be interesting. So after that happened, I was in the finals, obviously, and kind of it was against a guy that I had already fought about 2 years before that, or no, about a little over a year before that, and I had beat him, but he was really tough. And like just going back to the beginning, when we were talking about cockroaches, this dude is a cockroach. I dropped this dude with a heavy overhand left when we fought the first time, and he just stayed alive and kept coming the whole fight. Like that's what he's known for. Like you could drop this guy and he's not going to go out. He's just going to keep fighting. He actually got dropped the first fight of that season, and the dude went in to punch him and he got caught in a triangle, and he triangled the guy, and he was like half knocked out. And that was the first, and I like see it as I'm going into Madison Square Garden for the very first fight of that season. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Like that was the first thing I see on the screen as they're walking us in the back door to go into the locker rooms, because I was like the second to last fight on that card. And I was like, so we fast forward back to the end of the season where we're fighting, and I'm like, man, like this dude's tough. I already fought him once. Like I know he's not going to go away. Like I could beat this dude's head in for 5 rounds, and that's what I'm going to have to do to win. And so we go through the fight. Each round, like I felt like I won each round pretty handily. And I messed up his leg pretty good with some kicks and landed a lot of heavy punches, took him down, ground and pound. Like, it was a 5-round decision. I won the fight. And I did exactly what I knew I had to do because I knew he wasn't going to go away. So I just had to, like, I literally just had to beat him up for 5 rounds. Like, this dude wasn't going away. And so you fast forward to season 2, the guy I fight first is the same guy I fight in the semis, is the same guy I fight in the finals, because I beat him in the semis, but then the guy on the other side fails a drug test. And we still don't know what happened with that, because it's like the Nevada Commission never came out and said like what it was or what he failed for or whatever. And so I end up fighting the dude I just fought 8 weeks ago, and I find out like 3 or 4 weeks before my fight that it was actually him, because there was a couple of guys and they wanted to go through the correct like ranking system from the seeds of the tournament who really deserved it. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm training for a fight and we're like 3 or 4 weeks out. I don't know who the hell I'm fighting.
Don't
It
even
could
know
be
your opponent.
yeah, it could be one of like 3 guys. Like, is it going to be the guy that he beat in the quarterfinals? Like, does that guy deserve it because he was the number 2 seed and he got beat by the guy who failed a drug test? Or is it going to be the guy that he beat in the semifinals? Like, he finished both of those guys in the first round. So it's like, what seed are you going to take? But then they pick the guy I just fought. And I'm like, dude, I'm fighting this guy 3 times in 7 months. And that's the most I've ever, like, having 3 fights against somebody is one thing, but 3 fights within the same year is crazy.
Yeah.
And it just like, but I knew he couldn't really change much from the semifinals to there because it was only 10 weeks apart. So I switched up a couple little things and he tried to switch up a couple things, but basically it was the same fight as the first 2 where I just like, I think it was literally 50-45 on all cards. I just like beat him up for 5 rounds and just like, I just had to like steal his soul. Like round three, I got a takedown and he tried to fight up and I just slammed him back down. And I just heard him sigh. And I was like, this is like, that was like halfway through the fight. And I was like, okay, I broke him. Now I just got to keep going and keep just, but he was the same way. He was a cockroach, but I had to fight that guy 3 times in one season. It was like, it was insane.
It's hard beating someone twice, even wrestling. It was like, but then 3 times, it's like you never want to lose that 3rd one either, just because it's like
because it's the last one of the trilogy.
You're still winning. You still won 2 out of 3, but he got the last one. You know, that's
it's wild, man. But that's the season structure is there's nothing else like it. Obviously, the old Pride fights, you'd fight the Grand Prix, which is like 2 or 3 in one night, but that was before there was like regulated MMA, so it was just wild. You know, it's like like you don't think right now in 2019 or 2018 that you're going to have a structure like that. So it's like Bellator does something similar, but it's not more than 1 fight in one night. You know.
Do they still have more than 1 fight in one night?
Quit it. Sorry, my dog's eating styrofoam or something. I don't know what he's doing.
All down. Good. But like last season did you fight twice in one night too?
Yep. Yeah. So the first fight was the quarterfinal fight, and that was in Las Vegas. So the quarterfinal, I ended up fighting a dude named Almeida, who we had already been 1-1 against each other. And this fight was the fight to basically be the trilogy. And he stepped in on short notice. Well, he knew he was going to be the alternate, but the dude I was supposed to fight didn't make weight for the quarterfinals. Like, dude, you're fighting for $1 million and you're going to miss weight. Yeah. Like this, I don't understand some of this stuff that goes on, but so the Russian dude misses weight. I end up fighting Almeida for the 3rd time. And this trilogy fight, like, he has a back injury or something, and I end up beating him in a decision. And then, so I'm up 2-1 on our trilogy for that one, by the way. So it's like I got that trilogy. Yeah. And then I fought in the semifinals that same night. I fought Gilpin, the dude who I ended up fighting in the finals after the failed drug test.
And you went for the 5 rounds with him. So
yeah. So I fought that dude 11 rounds in 7 months. Like we fought a boxing title fight basically more
God.
than that because boxing's only 3-minute rounds. So yeah,
Yeah.
like we did an MMA boxing style title fight in that period.
Yeah, wow, that's wild. Um, and so like, what kind of stuff do you do outside of training that like basically like the little things you do? Like, how strict are you with like diet and stuff? And like, do you practice your mental game? I was a sports psychology major, and so that really kind of I didn't use it at all in college. I wish I did. I was too ignorant.
Yeah.
I
You
was
probably
like,
didn't know it enough though. Like now you're in a different place. You know what I mean? Like what we were talking about when you're that young, you don't really like you're going through the process because you're in school, but you're not really using it to your own advantage at that time.
yeah, I was more in the game than in the game actually playing as the character instead of outside looking at the character
Exactly.
third person. And so like now I can take myself out of the game. I'm like, Roman, you were a dumbass. Like
Yeah.
like you should have just listened to what they were teaching you. But I'm so intrigued with the mental aspect. Even now, like even when I was in NASCAR, it was like my physical abilities can only take you so far in NASCAR. But when you get in
Oh
front of
yeah.
that hub, you got to hit 5 lug nuts off perfect timing, and it's all mental. And so the mental game really kind of intrigues me now. And so kind of how has your mental game grown even from like college wrestling to fighting and then from just fighting to becoming a champion?
I think when you break it down, it's really simple. You break things down. Like people think too much sometimes. I feel like overthinking is like creates hesitation, and hesitation is like a slow death.
Ooh.
And I feel like the more, and this goes with anything outside of sports too, but in business, in life, whatever, like hesitating on something or being not sure of something, there's a difference between indecisive and hesitation. And I
Mm,
feel like if you're going to hesitate about something, or you have that you have like that second guess, like that something will probably tell you that that's not the right decision. Like anything that feels right is you're not going to hesitate.
hmm.
And if it's not the right, if it doesn't end up being the right thing, it was just an experience in life. But if you hesitate for that little bit and then go to that anyway, you're making a bad decision and you kind of know it. And I feel like that's really like there's only two ways you can go with something. Like
Yeah.
there's a fork and there's a left and a right. And I feel like a lot of people are just afraid to make a bad decision, so they don't make a decision at all, and that
Mm,
hesitation is going to kill you either way, because now you don't even give yourself a chance to fail.
yeah.
And that's a big, I guess that's really the only thing, is like make it simple with your mentality, your thought process of like go in and get it done. If it's wrong, then you learn that it's wrong right away. If
Yeah.
it's right, then you're onto something. But at least you made a decision and you can learn from it, or you made the right decision and you can grow on it. So I think a lot of people try to hesitate, and I don't think they try to hesitate more than they're afraid to make a mistake. So that's the first mistake.
Yeah. It's commitment. It's like
It is.
no matter whether you're choosing the left side of the fork or the right side of the fork, you got to
Yeah.
commit. And then like once you like, because if you sit there and hesitate, you're and this is even like a decision like if you like even saying like today I had a cold shower and I was hesitating before. I was like, do I turn it on warm or do I keep it cold? And then I was like,
Yeah.
stop being a yeah, just stop being a little girl, do it.
Yeah.
And um and then just with like that, it's like you're either gonna do something with full ass or you're gonna do something half ass, And so
Yeah.
with that hesitation, it's almost like you question how much ass you're gonna put behind it. So then you
Yeah.
go half ass to the left when you should have went full ass to the left and you could have just still been successful.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think it's when people break things down or try to think things through too much, it's purely um it's purely fear of failure, because even it's never really like if you try something, it doesn't work out, it's not really failing. You're just learning that that's not what you want, or it's learning that there's a better way to do it, instead of like, if you do nothing at all, that's what failing is. Like you think of people who, I mean, people always like motivational speakers and, successful people in business and sports, like they'll tell people all the time, like that's what, like if you don't do anything, that's failing. Like you can't be afraid to fail because you're never going to even get started. You have to go for it. If it doesn't work out, find a different way to make it work, or go a different route with something else if you really feel that that's not what you want. But I feel a lot of people just overthink, and obviously there has to be a thought process. You have to do things smart and
Yeah.
make an educated decision, but overthinking is the death of a lot of people, or being afraid to, like, just like, for instance, starting your own business. Say you want to do something, you want to start a t-shirt business, or you want to start like a clothing line, or
Even a podcast. Shoot.
yeah, exactly. You want to start a podcast, but you're afraid that it's not going to do well. So you don't start, or you don't come up with a plan of how it's going to work, and then at least go with that plan for however many episodes and see how well it does, or if it takes off, or what it does. And that's where they've already failed, because they're afraid to start it. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have, say with a podcast, whether you have 1 view or 1 million views, that one's going to be way better than not starting it, because you're doing something you like to do, and you have your full focus on it because it's something you like. So you're already intrigued to do it, and you're going to put full ass behind it. You're going to go into it. So there's no reason not to. But that's the biggest thing, is just like overthinking. Too many people overthink. And like, I just started my own business. I had a business with a partner for like the last 2 years, and then I broke off on my own, and we dissolved that business, and I started my own business this March. And it's like, everything that was the best decision. And I was like, the problem is, for almost a year, I was the hesitator. I was just sitting like, maybe he'll get better at what he's doing, or maybe he'll put more effort, or, like I literally had more stress with that business than my fighting career during the entire last year.
Wow.
And when I started my own business at the end of March, it's literally like, it's a lot of work, because I'm getting more business, which is great, but I'm way more happy than I was for the last like year. Even winning $1 million and winning 5 fights in a year and this and that, like I was so stressed about something that didn't even matter to me, that I wasn't even, for one, I wasn't making money off of it. So it's not like it was making me a ton of money and I was just stressed out.
Yeah.
Like we weren't taking money from the company. We were just building it and this and that. And so I was more stressed about that than something that was actually providing for me and my wife, and like providing a future for us, financially and in my career, and like my legacy altogether. That was not stressing me out at all. It was this little business that was just like draining me of all my extra energy I could have been giving toward my family or my wife or myself. And so the hesitation, that's why it's like, I'll never hesitate on something like that again, but you learn from it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't hesitate to go into business with him, because I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I think we can make it work, because I'm always positive about things. And I gave him, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chances to like always give the benefit of the doubt, because that's just the type of person I am. And then it got to the point where I was like, my happiness is way more important than just being in this because I said I was going to do it. And that goes all the way back to the baseball story I told you.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy doing it, don't do it. There's no reason. And I started my own business now, and I'm way happier working a lot harder, but I'm way happier with what I'm doing. It's literally like zero like stress about a person or a thing that's not contributing. And now all the stress goes to like little things of like, is the material going to be there? Is it like all the normal work stuff? But it's not the stress of like a person creating stress for you. So it's, and that was all hesitation. I hesitated on ending it during the season last year while I was fighting, because I was like, oh, I just want to focus on fighting and, you know, run the business on the side. And then I should have just been like, I'm done with the business right now, and then just focus the rest of the year on just fighting. But
Yeah.
I mean, it ended up working out in the long run, but it took me a year later, basically, to make the decision of like, okay, this is the right decision. Because at first I thought I was just being an asshole, and then I realized like, no, I'm just letting this drag on, because I'm not going to be happy in 2 years or 3 years if I let it continue.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so
Having that awareness that whether it was a right fit or a wrong fit, and then having the courage to kind of make the decision to cut your losses and
yeah,
start your own. But man, you're like speaking to me, because I mean, I told you this is my first Zoom interview,
yeah.
and I haven't had many podcasts in a while, and so I'm like, this was me not hesitating, even though
Hell
I've been
yeah.
in hesitation for a couple months. But
Well,
it
that's the
definitely,
thing, dude. It's like there's always going to be outliers and outside forces. Like obviously COVID changes a lot of things for all of us,
yeah,
but like in your own decision making process, like there's no reason to hesitate on stuff. Like I've like I jumped full force into MMA once I decided. I was like, dude, I packed my stuff in the bed of my truck and I was like, let's go. I have no clue what the future is going to be. I didn't even have $500 in my pocket because I blew my water pump on my truck in uh where was in Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. And my mom has like a Firestone card. I think it's Firestone, whatever the Bridgestone or Firestone. They have like maintenance places all over the country. And I was like 99 miles from there, and my grandma was paying for my AAA at the time, like $100 a year or something.
yeah.
And so I had 99 free miles of towing. So I got it towed to Omaha. And my brother and I actually knew a girl from our hometown who was living in Omaha with her boyfriend at the time. So we hung out with them all day while my truck got fixed, and my mom paid for it to be able to drive all the way to Sacramento. And we were like directly halfway. And I was just like, I was all in. I had no money, literally mowing lawns, teaching privates, doing whatever I could to just like pay bills and eat.
I love
So it's
that.
like you
Yeah,
got to go all in.
I love hearing like stories like that, like where someone just drops everything and just dips out, and then there's that phase of adversity where it's like they're questioning everything, but they're still just putting everything into it, and
Oh
then
yeah,
it just fucking blossoms, and you're
dude. There
like,
were so many years where I was like, I don't know why I'm still fighting. Like I'm not making any money. I couldn't get fights at first anyway because nobody wanted to fight a wrestler with my caliber of wrestling at the time. Like I really didn't start making enough money to support myself until I was like my eighth or ninth pro fight.
wow,
Like in the first 7 pro fights took like 3 or 4 years because it was just like 8 months in between fights. A guy would take a fight, then drop out, then I couldn't get another opponent. Like it was just nonstop. And I was like, there were so many times where I got to the point, like I was coaching with Uriah on the Ultimate Fighter for 2 separate seasons. And like they would pay us each week, but we were living in Vegas. So we were just literally spend money on bottles and go to the pool parties. And like, I didn't save any money out there. I literally came home with the last paycheck plus like $1,500 that he distributed to all of us when he won the coaches challenge the one time. And I was just like, dude, this is crazy. Then the second time we went out there for the Ultimate Fighter, I saved up a little more money, did less partying, and like, it was just like, man, it's such a learning process going through life. But getting back to Virginia Tech, I took that job originally to be able to pay off credit card bills from college, to be able to start with a clean slate. And I was still broke for like 4 years. So it doesn't matter whether you're going to make a couple grand a month for 6 months. It's still not going to get you out of the hole. until you're like set, you know. It's really weird, but I think it helped establish, like, I think coaching that year helped me establish the decision of like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna make it my career. Then if it doesn't work out, then it was, you know, it's the fork in the road. Like, you do it. If it doesn't work, you just go back to what your original plan is.
Yep. Yep. If fighting don't work, just throw all your clothes in the trash bag in the back of your truck.
Exactly. Drive back all the way home.
Yep. And find yourself another grind, you know?
Exactly. Because I know I can grind. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just like, if fighting wasn't going to work, I knew something else would. I knew I could work hard enough. I just didn't know at what.
Yep. That's awesome. So, what's kind of the rest of the year kind of look like for you? Like, have they discussed like talking about when they're going to start fighting again and things like that?
Well, we're pushing for like September, October fight, because pretty much like Bellator is going to have a fight in July, so they're
Mhm.
coming back. There's other like smaller cards that are having fights, just local fights all over the country.
Yep.
Obviously the UFC is doing their thing, but they have a private facility that they're doing their fights in, so it's kind of a little different. They have a lot more money to work with.
Yep. They got an island.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I'm going to Abu Dhabi for Benavidez's title fight July 18th. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
you gotta get to Vegas first. They fly you to Vegas, then they put you in like a hotel quarantine and they test you.
Wow.
Then after the quarantine, you get on the plane, and the sheiks are running everything over there. So the sheiks are flying everybody private to the island, which is it's like Yaz Island in Abu Dhabi. So they're flying everyone private. Then you get there, you have to go to a quarantine hotel there. They test you again. Then 2 days later, they take you over to the fighter hotel where the actual fight week's going to be. Then you get through that, and then after the fight, they test you again before you're able to fly back to the U.S. So it's crazy. That's my next 2 weeks of July, after like the 8th all the way through the 20th, basically.
Man, that's that's going to be an awesome experience.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be different.
But I'm glad that they're doing it all. They're doing it right. You know, it's
Yeah.
like the safety of the fighters and everything. I mean, you don't want this kind of infecting.
Well, that's the
More
thing
people.
too, is like, I understand that PFL wants to play it safe, and we're not going to do a full season, and they didn't want to do a shortened season because the ratings were really good last year, so they didn't want to just like throw it together because of COVID. But all the fighters want to fight. Why not have a couple showcase fight cards with like a couple champions on each one, and then a couple of the fighters who are sticking around for next season that are signed? Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just do it at a place where we can have the fights, because like New York and New Jersey, they're still kind of locked down. And that my first fight in May was going to be in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know. I've been an ambassador for PFL since day one, because it used to be World Series of Fighting. They gave me my first opportunity back in the day on short notice for a title fight. Like, I've been with them for 7 years pretty much now, 6 or 7 years. So I have faith that they're going to do the right thing for the fighters, but fighters got to make money. I'm sure not everybody has their own business where they're able to go out and do, work on the side and be able to make a living. But that's why I'm so hardcore into doing the patios and everything right now for our business. And it's been like a blessing in disguise to be able to build this new business up since I started it this spring. So it's interesting. I was actually mowing one of my buddy's properties. He's got 2.5 acres that he's going to build on in a couple of years. And it just came about like, hey, you have a landscape company? I was like, well, I just started a new one on my own. But yeah, it's the same deal. Everything's the same pretty much. And he was like, well, I have this property I need mowed once a month. I get off the mower after the first day mowing this thing. It's like a Monday. And I don't remember what date that was. I'll have to look back at it because that was kind of a crazy thing because that was the day I found out from like a million text messages on my phone in my pocket that the PFL season wasn't going to happen this year. And I was like, holy shit. And I was like, I didn't even have a text from my manager or the CEO of PFL or anybody. And I was like, I didn't know if it was real or if it was just clickbait online.
Yeah.
So I messaged Ali, my manager, and he's like, we'll get it figured out. I just found out too. Like PFL announced it like to the media, but not to any of us. So nobody had a clue. And that's when I was like, well, at least I got this business to keep growing and like just go with the flow. And but yeah, I mean, we all want to fight. Like everyone that was a champion last year, everybody that's still signed under contract, like nobody wants to wait a whole year to fight in next season. Like everybody that's fighting, like for me, I'm in my prime right now. I feel like I want to fight a few more years and, you know, be done with it and move on. But as far as this year, there definitely isn't going to be a season, but there should be at least one or two fights. And if there's not, I don't think anybody is going to be very happy if they're on contract.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was the first person that was like, hell yeah, I am psyched that combat sports is the first sport back.
Oh, for sure. It's awesome.
I mean, first off, I was like, NASCAR shit the bucket because they don't need to be 6 feet away. They're already 6 feet. They're in the,
I know what the hell's up.
I was like,
they
should have been the first sport back.
Yeah.
But when UFC came up, I was like the first one that was like, and I haven't missed one yet.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It's pure entertainment. I mean, there's no sports coming back yet. Like the NBA has been talking about coming back, and then a lot of the athletes are saying they're not doing it for either one reason or the other. And I mean, if it's health related, I get it. Everybody has their own things that they stand for, which I agree with. But
yeah,
I mean, sports coming back is like it's a must. Like even if you do it in an empty arena, you know the ratings on TV are going to be insane. Mm-hmm. It's like who cares if you're not putting butts in seats? You're still selling crazy rating because everyone that would be there is going to be watching on TV. Yeah. So it's like for baseball and basketball and these other sports not to go through with any of the playoff stuff that they're talking about is just stupid in my opinion. Yeah. There's definitely a way to do it the right way, and you're going to have people that have the virus, and I mean the testing for the virus isn't 100% anyway, so who knows if it's it's like this is all crazy. It's really weird. It's like
there's
very politically driven, but there's truth to it. So it's like everybody's kind of nervous and doesn't want to do anything. And like, I'm with it. Like I have grandparents that aren't very healthy, and if they got it, they'd probably not make it. So like, you gotta kind of toe the line and respect the people that can die from it or, be deathly ill. So
yeah, I'm excited to see what the NFL does. Cause there's no way America's not having football.
There's no way.
There's zero way.
Roger Goodell, like he'll go to the White House. Like that's what Dana White had to do. He had to go to the White House and have a conversation and be like, look, this is what we're doing. We'll do every precaution we have to do. And there were still states and people involved that didn't want it to happen, but he got it done. And that's the thing is like that dude, like he's a gangster for being able to get it done. Cause all these fighters that you've seen fight these last few cards are putting food on the table for their families. And, some of them don't make very much money, so they have to fight a few times a year to even get by. So it's, I'm super happy for everybody that, I have tons of friends and teammates that are in the UFC, and they're all getting opportunities to, one, perform, and that's what we're here for, and two, be able to put food on the table. Like it's important. And I think that's something that the higher ups in PFL need to like realize a little bit. Like health and safety is very important, and we get that, but putting food on the table is even more important in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
yep, and you hear it in every one of their post-fight interviews too. It's people want to fight, and it's like, I mean, they're like I remember one guy he had won, but he had a bad first round, and he was like, man, now I'm not getting that fight of the night bonus. Like he's like he's like, I know I'm not going to get it. Because I got stuff to do. I went to work on Friday, and like,
Yeah.
he goes, I go to work tomorrow. He said, I go back to work tomorrow. It's
Dude,
crazy
that's
seeing that.
hilarious.
Yeah.
It is, dude. It's wild. People
Yeah.
don't realize it. Like, the life of a fighter is not glamorous at all. Like, when you're in the cage, it's awesome because people get to see you at like your highest or your very lowest if you lose. So they get to see all aspects of it from the outside. But there's a lot that goes into it, man. Like, I know people with kids who are like working two jobs, or like they're working, their girlfriend or their wife's working, then they're trying to train at night before bed. Like, it's not easy. It really isn't. Like, you have to be like the top 1% of fighters to be able to make enough to not have another job.
Yeah.
It's wild, man. It's not like baseball or football where they're making hundreds of millions a year. Like a $230 million contract. You'll never see that in fighting, that's for sure.
Maybe, hopefully one day, but yeah.
Yeah, well, probably not while I'm alive, that's for sure.
Yeah, realistically. But
Yeah.
before we close up, I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
Is it true that once you wrestle, everything else is easy based on how you fought and everything? Is it still true?
It is true from a mentality standpoint, but the first time you get in a real fight where your brain's fuzzy and you get out of that fight, even whether you win or lose, you're just like, that is tough because you can't control that. So I would say wrestling is what pushed me through some of those fights where I felt that way. That's 100% true. So yeah, because there's other people that would just take a knee or sit down and let the fight be over and just take a few more punches for the ref to jump in. But yeah, that's like when you're not able to kind of see clearly and your brain's fuzzy and you're taking some damage and you're trying to fight to get back to it. That's all a wrestler mentality for sure.
I'm having just memories, flashbacks coming back. Times when I got hit open, I'm like, and I remember seeing light, and then I came back, and I'm like, where is everybody?
Yeah, you're like, what is going on right now?
People are just looking at you when you lay out. You're like, who are these people?
Yeah, it's like when in the movies when they're on a hospital bed and all the big lights and people are over their face. You're like, yep, that's what I feel like.
Yep. Well, Lance, thank you so much for coming on, sharing everything. I know I learned some stuff from you, and I hope my audience does as well. Where can people follow you on social media and things like that?
On Facebook, it's Lance Palmer MMA. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at Lance Palmer. And that's pretty much the only social media I use right now. I'm not really into TikTok or any of the other stuff. Yeah. So it's like, but yeah, that's kind of what I use for my social media and my fan base and people who follow and support me. I did have a website, but I don't know what happened with that. Somebody said it's a porn page now or something. So I'm not gonna say what my. It was weird too because it was just like my regular like website, and then I guess like after if it expires, like somebody like there's hackers that'll buy it and put porn on it or some shit. I got a message on Twitter and the dude's like, hey man, take that website off your Twitter bio. It's a porn site. And I was like, what? I was like, no, it's not. That was he's like, you must not have paid your like subscription to renew it or something. Cause I never really used my website for anything. Like if I sell merchandise, I'll sell it through barbarianapparel.com or something. Like they'll do like a fight t-shirt for me and stuff. And they're a wrestling based brand. So I always try to, send people to them to support them too.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll be looking for that stuff, man. I'm excited to see you fight again. And I'll have to get me a Party Palmer shirt for sure.
I'll send you one. You'll have to send me your address once we're done. I'll get one out to you.
All day. But yeah, man. Hey, thank you for coming on. I look forward to following you, and I'll have to get you on again in the future once you get that next $1 million title again.
Heck yeah, dude. I appreciate you having me on. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care, bro.
Later.